Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for the very first episode of the Bee's Knees podcast. I'm Brittany.
And I'm Ben. Today we're talking about the bees.
We like talking about a whole lot of topics. Join us if you please, cause we're the Bee's Knees, oh yeah.
So this is our very first podcast ever, and we're going to really focus on diving into who we are and let you know who exactly you're listening to. So I mentioned briefly on our Instagram page, if you follow us, then you'll know what I'm talking about. If you don't follow us, then you should, and then you would know what I'm talking about. But yeah, as I mentioned on our Instagram, we both have a performance history.
Yeah.
I was into theater, and Ben, you played music.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We're in bands and stuff like that. So let's just go back and start at the beginning and what got us started into those creative hobbies.
All right. Why don't you go first? Tell me about what got you into theater.
Okay, so if we're thinking about like my first exposure to actually performing, I think I was maybe in grade 3, and we had this project that I remember grade 3 really being based around reading, exploring your creative writing, storytelling, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a project that was focused on expression and how you can tell based off of what punctuation is used in a sentence, how things are said.
Okay.
So we were broken up into groups of 4, I believe, and we were given a skit to perform. And you didn't really have to perform it because we were only in grade 3. Like, you were allowed to read it if you wanted, but the point of it was to use your voice to really express how things are being said.
Okay, I'm following along.
Yeah. So I remember being given this project and thinking, like, I basically just get to read but play at the same time. That's how, like, my grade 3 mind processed this. Because, like, as a kid, I was really into role playing already. Like, all of my play experience was based around putting on shows, pretending I was like a Spice Girl. Like, I was very focused around performance in play. So given this project, I was like, okay, cool. So I get to play and I get marked for it. That's awesome. So we had a couple weeks where we could work in our groups, just figure out how we were going to say things, and we were encouraged to use props if we wanted, or we were given some costumes that we could try on just to make it more fun and like really get into it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really took advantage of it. And I remember being really ambitious. Like, I was going to try and memorize the whole thing.
Okay.
As well as just go over the top with enthusiasm. So anyway, we are doing these projects, and we figured out who's saying what, who's being what character, and it's finally the day we're doing our presentations. And I get up in front of my class, and I do everything as I had rehearsed it, only I don't have a piece of paper in front of me with what I'm supposed to say. So grade 3, that's very ambitious to think that you can memorize. And I think I only had maybe like 5 lines that I had to say. The skits were very short, but I ended up just getting stuck in a loop. Like, I said my first 2 lines, and then I ended up going back and saying the line again. And then my classmates who actually kept their papers, they were like, this is what you're supposed to say.
Oh, they were just sitting there panicking, being like, what is this girl doing?
This is what you get for trying to be an overachiever. Like, but anyway, the point was, like, even though that was, like, I didn't really think of it as embarrassing at the time because I think I was too young to really grasp that. I just thought, like, oh, this is too much fun to really care about it being embarrassing that I did that. I'm sure my classmates were probably kind of ticked, though, but whatever. Anyway, we got through it. We got a good grade. And I just remember, like, either in the notes or something, in the feedback, the teacher just said, like, you did a really good job. You grasped the concept of the project. You used your voice to be expressive. You used your body language to be expressive. You understand storytelling pretty much. But then she also went on to say that this was an area I seemed to really thrive in. I enjoyed it, and you could see that I was enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and as a teacher of grade 3s, and I think if you have a good teacher, they really take it upon themselves to encourage you because they see potential in you that you don't yet see in yourself.
Yeah.
And so those words that they say are so meaningful that you take them with you, and you actually do end up exploring them further because of like your first influence.
Yeah.
So I really think that she was my first influence as far as getting into theater, even though after that I didn't do any extracurricular theater. I didn't go get acting lessons or get an acting coach or anything like that.
Why not?
Yeah, because yeah, that's a different story. But anyway, like if I went to a camp and they had a art option versus a sport option, I took the art option, but I didn't really do anything really performance based until like grade 8. So that was my first exposure to being theatrical.
Cool. Well, either way, thanks, random grade 3 teacher.
Yeah, I know. I wish I could remember her name, but I can't. It's too far away. So anyway, that was my first exposure to theater. What about you? How did you get into playing guitar?
Okay, so playing guitar originally started as, I guess, trying to play piano. When I was little, my parents just always had a piano, so I would always just kind of just goof around on it. But when I was maybe 6 years old, my dad thought it would be a great idea to invest in piano lessons for me.
Mm-hmm.
So he found somebody in town that would teach. He dragged me along every week. He gave the lady like $20 to go over the same thing week after week because I never practiced.
So did you actually have an interest in playing or learning piano, or that was just something that they thought you had an interest in because you would play around on the piano you already had?
Like, I think I thought I had an interest.
Right, until you actually were doing it.
Until I got into it, and I just had no motivation to practice. So that didn't last very long. And then a year and a half later, we went to this kind of like a disease benefit concert in Toronto. And one of the bands that was playing, the guitarist had just such a visible passion for what he was doing. The amount of energy he had just running around the stage, playing just crazy guitar parts, at least in my young mind, thought they were just crazy, the best thing in the world. And it just inspired me to want to do it, which is kind of ironic because I don't listen to the band anymore.
Right.
I could care less about this band. The biggest thing was just that musician's just passion for it sparked my passion for it. And then so I convinced my dad to get me a guitar. I did take some lessons, but I was mainly self-taught just because I never practiced what they wanted me to practice.
Mm-hmm.
I just played what I wanted, which was fine for a bit, but then it just kind of got to me playing the same things over and over.
Which you have like no attention span, so
No,
that would have gotten real old real quick.
Yeah. And even now, like, I find myself playing some of the same things that I used to play just over and over and over.
Right.
But then one day my neighbor, who was a few years younger than me, said, "Oh, I want to play guitar too." So me, with my limited skills and just my complete inability to teach, gave him my few little tidbits of playing and those two little things that I played over and over. And he just kind of took that, became self-taught as well, and then just got better than me, which was completely unfair. But then kind of I guess it was competitive that like, oh, well, he did that and now he's better than me, so I've got to get better than him.
Right.
So that kind of sparked just the days of me and him just growing as musicians together.
A healthy competition.
Exactly. And so we would just hang out in his parents' basement just all the time, staying up till 3 a.m. writing songs that kind of branched into, well, we're writing these songs, why don't we record them?
Mm-hmm.
But we had no idea about any of that stuff. We we kind of took one of the closets in his basement. We tore it apart. We stuffed the ceilings with pillows, which, by the way, is not effective. We found that out years later. It doesn't soundproof anything. So we stuffed the ceilings with pillows. We threw a microphone in there, and we made kind of our own little recording studio, which was very difficult because, like I said, with guitar, I was self-taught. With all of this, we were also just very self-taught. We had no idea what we were doing.
Right.
But just out of necessity, we taught ourselves.
So what age would you have been at this point? Because obviously you're not a couple of 6-year-olds.
Oh yeah, we were
ripping out a
6-year-olds ripping the
basement.
ceiling, yeah. That I think I was maybe like 12 or 13.
Okay.
So like we were still much too young for any parent to allow the ceiling to be ripped out of a room.
They didn't know what you were doing.
I had no idea. But so we had this booth, we had this setup, we YouTubed our way to being competent enough to have at least poor quality recordings.
Right.
And then his brother was a drummer and a pianist. And so we had just more and more instruments lining up.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't checked in on him in a while, but he just kind of took off on that, like producing and stuff.
Right.
But we would create. We would stay up late. We would make songs, videos, all sorts of stuff, and then just kind of mix them together. Like we had our own music videos that every part of that was self-made.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty confident that the only reason those exist, if they still exist, is because I wasn't left alone to my own devices and I had a creative partner.
Right.
Because I would have just still been playing those 2 guitar parts that I had been playing for 2 or 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't have accomplished any of those things that I have. I wouldn't have played where I've played. I wouldn't have made the music I've made without just somebody to make stuff with.
Yeah. And I think too, like both of us, our highest, like our peak for our hobbies, let's just say,
Yeah.
they peaked in high school. Like I remember you playing in your bands for different high school shows and stuff like that. And that's when I did my most performance arts.
Yeah, I feel like I remember you were always busy with plays, whether it was a practice or at some just school sanctioned thing, you were on stage. I did like one song here and there for those. I feel like where mine took off was like in the summers towards the end of high school, where me and the guys would just go play at various places. Yeah. So yeah, I guess high school was where it was at because you didn't have any other commitments. You could you were free to focus on just recreational stuff.
Yeah. And I know like in high school, I had the most development as far as that goes. Like that's where I actually committed myself to it. And I was really focused on this community of people I was working with. And just, it was the best time for that for me because of just who I was working with, the support team that I had, the fact that I had no other commitments to distract me or anything. I could just go have fun doing this and just bettering myself.
Yeah. Those were the days of just no commitments.
Yeah. And then after high school, that's when we both just kind of stopped having those things that we enjoyed so much.
Yeah. And like when we went off to post-secondary, we didn't have any of those groups that we had.
Yeah.
I didn't have any of my former bandmates. You didn't have your high school drama club.
Yeah. And it's hard because it's starting from scratch. I don't know. Like I have always had a hard time when you're starting from scratch, meeting people. And like we already had the starting from scratch in the sense that we had just moved 4 hours away from everybody that we knew.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like I was just branching out and meeting new people in theater while still having a support system. It was, you're picking up, you're moving to a completely different city, You are starting at a completely different school. You don't know anybody. And then also like trying to balance the new learning style from high school to university. So it's just like, it was a lot to take in. And there was no way that I was able to, at that time, get involved in theater post-secondary.
Yeah. There's too much other stuff going on.
Yeah. But then at the same time, I didn't realize how much that was a part of me until it was gone.
Yeah.
So now we're at this point in our lives, and we just decided that it's been too long since we've done anything creative, and we haven't done anything together ever. And so, like, why not?
Yeah. And like in high school, you did theater, which is a company. Like you had a group of people making things with you. And clearly, I worked best either with my competitive natured friend or in a band scenario, having other people. And like, we've got other people with us all the time. We're each other's other people. If that makes any sense.
It's so cheesy.
But it's true.
Okay, so when I first came to you and said that I wanted to do something again, and at first it started out me saying that I wanted to do like a YouTube channel or something along those lines. Just anything to get creating again.
Yeah.
And then you ended up suggesting a podcast instead.
Well, yeah, so basically you said, I want to make like a YouTube channel where we just like sit and talk about things. I was like, so a podcast. You know, it's like what a YouTube channel where we have like a video of us sitting there and we just kind of talk about things. And I was like, a podcast. You're describing a podcast.
Yeah, I think it's just because I was under the understanding that like a podcast was like a TED Talk. Like it was an educational thing and restricted only to like
informative stuff.
Yeah, and I didn't think it could be like a leisurely entertainment based thing. So that's why I just like kind of went to YouTube first.
Yeah, and then you kind of were expanding on what you really wanted to do.
Yeah, because like I've always dreamt of doing some sort of voice work. Like I always think, oh, that must be so fun to be the voice of a character or to even do like audiobooks or something. And that was something that I had never expressed to anyone before. And like, did that take you off guard at all when I said that that was something I thought would be fun to do, like a dream career kind of thing?
Like a little bit yes and a little bit no. The reason that it wasn't is because you have a phenomenal voice. I could listen to you talk all day.
Oh my gosh, that's just because you're married to me.
Well, it's just a perk. The reason it did surprise me, though, was because like there were times that you wouldn't even sing in the car because you were self-conscious of your voice.
Yeah, like I think we had been together for like 2 years before I would sing in the car with you.
Yeah, it was a long time.
And it's funny because like singing is something that I like to do. And like I'm not saying like I'm a phenomenal singer or anything.
She's a phenomenal singer.
No, I'm not. But like it's just something I like to do. Singing in the car is just one of my favorite things.
It's fun.
Yeah. And so just the fact that it took me so long to do that in front of someone that I was dating and obviously very comfortable with just shows how insecure I was with my voice. So the fact that now we're doing a podcast is just crazy to me.
Yeah, because it's only your voice.
Exactly. And like I just remember being in maybe grade 8 or something, and a friend had asked me to read parts of a book. Like she was doing something for creative writing or some English project, and she was making a video for the book she had read. I don't really remember the basis of the project she was doing, but she asked me to read parts of the book to put in the video. And so I did it without even thinking. I was like, oh yeah, that's no problem. But then as I was listening and watching the presentation and I heard my voice, I was just so caught off guard. Like, that's not what I sound like.
Who is this person speaking?
Yeah, it was so foreign to me. I was like, is that actually how I sound? I was so confused. And because it was so strange to me. That was the first time I had actually heard my voice outside of my head, that I was just like instantly insecure.
Yeah.
Like I had no idea that's what I really sounded like. And so then to finally hear what you sound like, it's
off-putting.
Yeah, it just catches you completely off guard. You don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, I feel like just about everybody goes through that, because there was a long time where I also felt the same way. Like, I am 100% not a fan of the way my voice sounds through a recording. But, like, whenever I would write a song, I couldn't just write it and have somebody else sing it. Because one, that's not what I really wanted. And two, I didn't know anybody that could sing.
Right.
So I would just make the song, and I would record the song. I guess I just kind of got lucky in the sense that my desire to make the songs and all of this content outweighed any anxiety I had about my voice.
Yeah. And then there's people like me who aren't so lucky.
Yeah, it kind of ruled your life.
Yeah. So then, like, I just was in this mindset, like, you can't do this. You can't do anything that's voice-based, because if you're bad at it, you can't just change your voice. Like, your voice is your voice.
Yeah.
So I was just like, what is even the point in pursuing this if you can't do anything about it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I had spent so long living in that fear-based mindset. And I think it was just after becoming parents that I really kind of had this revelation that as we're watching our kids grow and they're learning new things and they're exploring new things, they're going to come into situations that they're not doing something as well as they thought they would do.
Yeah.
And so they're faced with this opportunity to do something even though they know they're not good at it, or to just give up on it completely. And I've noticed that, like, obviously I find myself encouraging them to do it because we're their parents and we're supposed to be that person for them. We're supposed to be the ones that encourage them to do these things and to try new things. And if you mess up, you just get right back up and do it again. And so as I'm seeing them get frustrated sometimes that they can't do a thing the way that they want to do it, or they expect themselves to do something perfectly the first time. And I am always saying to them, look, you can do this again. You can make a mistake. You can try again. Making mistakes is part of learning and getting better. And I thought to myself one day, if I can say this to them so confidently, and I have so much confidence in them to work at it and to overcome these fears and frustrations based around a thing that they're not good at yet, then why can't I do that for myself?
Yeah.
Why can't I face something that I really want to do and do it regardless of whether or not I may not be good at it, and let myself grow and get better at it and not rob myself of anything?
Yeah. And just make a podcast.
Exactly. So here we are making a podcast, and I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of me and I'm proud of us for getting to this point.
Yeah, and it just feels really nice to just be sitting here making things.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I hope you guys really enjoyed listening to our first episode on introducing ourselves and who we are and where we've come from and how we came to make this podcast.
And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to us on social media. You can find us on Twitter at The Bee's Knees Cast, Instagram and YouTube at The Bee's Knees Podcast.
Again, thanks for joining us at the Bee's Knees Podcast, and we'll talk soon.